Dr. Naveen Bhikhari, Director General, Independent Commission Against Corruption, Mr. Sudhamulal, Director General, Mauritius Revenue Authority, Mr. Rajesh Ramlal, Deputy Solicitor General, distinguished officers of the ICAC, distinguished colleagues of the MRA, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon to you all. We are gathered here, as you know, this afternoon to witness the signing of the very first MoU between the MRA and ICAC. As you have observed, this function is being organized with due respect to all sanitary protocols. Without much ado, I will request our Director General, Mr. Sudhamulal, to say a few words, please.
Dr. Naveen Bhikhari, Director General ICAC, Mr. Rajesh Ramlal, Deputy Solicitor General, distinguished officers from ICAC, MRA colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am honored and privileged to welcome you all at the MRA. This ceremony is being held to officially sign the Memorandum of Understanding between the MRA and ICAC, which sets out a comprehensive framework for referral of cases, exchange of information, and enhanced coordination between the two agencies. The MRA has signed some 25 MoUs with various local institutions such as the Bank of Mauritius, Financial Service Commission, Financial Intelligence Unit, and the Police Department, among others. At the MRA, we do not enter into MoUs only for the sake of increasing the number. We in fact consider an MoU as an important document that reduces the level of uncertainty in our business by highlighting our expectations and objectives and preventing possible future disagreements. We enter into MoUs because the very sense of our processes and productivity demands that we do so in order to achieve more. The process of developing the MoU with ICAC on referral of cases and exchange of information was initiated back in May 2019 when the distinguished Director General of ICAC, Dr. Bhikhari, visited our premises and made a presentation to MRA senior management. Since then, our two teams have been meeting and discussing the various options for cooperation. I am happy that the MoU is being signed today, that is after almost 2 years. It's indeed an achievement for both the MRA and the ICAC. The development of this MoU has been triggered by the Mutual Evaluation Report published by the Eastern Southern Africa Anti-Money Laundering Group in July 2018 on the AML CFT. One of the priority actions identified in the report, which was relevant for the MRA, was that law enforcement authorities should conduct parallel financial investigations, including investigation of tax evasion cases as a predicate offense for money laundering. In February 2020, Mauritius made a high-level commitment to work with the FATF and SMLOG to strengthen the effectiveness of its AML CFT regime. Recommendation 30 of the FATF prescribes that law enforcement authorities should develop a proactive parallel financial investigation when pursuing money laundering, associated predicate offenses, and terrorist financing. The standard also recognizes that countries should also make use, when necessary, of a permanent or temporary multidisciplinary groups specialized in financial or asset investigations. The ICAC is the specialist agency in money laundering investigations and prosecutions, whereas the MRA is the agency responsible for the administration and collection of taxes in Mauritius. There has always been interaction, coordination, and cooperation between our two agencies. In fact, during the last 2 years, the MRA has referred 33 cases to ICAC for investigation, and some 39 cases have been received by us from the ICAC. But in our quest for excellence and also following the recommendations and comments from the FATF, there was need to enhance this coordination through formalized procedures. Hence, the proposal for entering into an MoU. The MoU sets out a framework between the MRA and ICAC in their common pursuit to ensure that money laundering investigations related to the predicate offense of tax evasion and associated parallel investigations are conducted in accordance with Recommendation 30 of FATF Recommendations 2012, and there is effective cooperation regarding the timely exchange of information and referral of cases relating to tax evasion and money laundering investigations, either upon request or spontaneously. I would like to seize the occasion of the presence of our distinguished guest, Dr. Bikari, Director General ICAC, to express our utmost commitment to work in collaboration and assist ICAC wherever possible so that it can meet its commitment in terms of tackling both corruption and money laundering. In July 2020, we supported the proposals for the MRA Act to be amended to stay assessments or claims intended to be raised in suspected tax evasion cases to enable money laundering prosecution to take precedence. The MoU will be another instrument in the array of measures in place to consolidate the strong working relationship which already exists between MRA and ICAC. I also firmly believe that we should use this event today to give a strong signal to those persons who engage in massive tax evasion and deprive the state from the much-needed tax revenue, especially during this pandemic period. Let me say it loud and clear, the MRA and ICAC are building bridges today to ensure that the tax evaders will not only be subject to tax assessments and prosecutions under revenue laws by the MRA, but they stand the risk of being prosecuted for money laundering offenses by the ICAC, since tax evasion can constitute a predicate offense to money laundering. Hence, my advice to taxpayers: pay your taxes and sleep peacefully. I'm confident that the fight against tax evasion and money laundering will only be won if all the relevant stakeholders work together in a concerted, coordinated, and collaborative approach, and this MoU will enable us to achieve this purpose. This MoU is the key for successful prosecution by both the MRA and the ICAC. Curbing these financial crimes will be for the benefit of all citizens of Mauritius. Furthermore, on an international level, we are sending the right signal that Mauritius is developing a more effective system to combat money laundering and its predicate offenses. This MoU is therefore a timely response of both parties to address the increasing trend of money laundering and associated crimes around the world. On a final note, I wish to thank the ICAC, the State Law Office, represented today by Mr. Rajesh Ramlal, Deputy Solicitor General, the Financial Investigation Department, especially Mrs. Ramdeen, the Legal Service Department, especially Yatisha, the Customs Department, Mr. Ramvaran, my management team, and all persons who in way or other have contributed towards the finalization of this MoU. I also wish to thank the Director General ICAC and his officers for their continuous support and collaboration in our common fight to track down criminals. I thank you for your patience and listening.
It's an honor for me to be here today. So I recognize in the room Mr. and Mrs. Ramjin, long-time colleagues, Mr. Ramlul, Deputy Solicitor General, Mr. Rambaran, the Director of Investigation from the ICAC, Mr. Rupchan, the Chief Legal Advisor, and every other officer and colleague who have worked on this particular project. I think if I can give a little bit of context to what has where we are at this particular point in time regarding this MoU and why it has been materialized. It's as a result of us Mauritius having to comply with the FATF anti-money laundering and combating terrorism finance obligation. So as we all know here, at some point in time, Mauritius was placed on a FATF list, which some people call black, but it's not black. It's gray, because there are only two countries on the blacklist. There's Iran and the North Korea. So as a result of having been placed on that list, which came out because our system, the FATF came to realize that there were weaknesses in our system, we had to undertake a plan of action to try and comply and adopt a series of measures that would help us eventually get out of this list. So this is where the question of signing the MoU came up, because in the last year or so, we've been working closely with the FATF. There's a particular organ called the Joint Group of the FATF, which has been monitoring our progress at different levels. And one of the questions that came up in the last progress report that we submitted a month ago in April is we had indicated previously that we were negotiating an MoU with the MRA, and the question was put to us in the next face-to-face meeting with the joint group, which is scheduled on the 12th of May, next Wednesday. They would like us to provide some additional information regarding the conclusion or the evolution or any progress for that matter on this MoU. So this is where we are. And I spoke to Mrs. Ramjin on a regular basis, and we've been in touch with the Director General, of course, in order to try and see whether we could expedite matters and get this MoU signed so that on the 12th, when we meet with the FATF Joint Group, we are in a better position to demonstrate that we have finalized and signed the MoU, and they're going to ask us questions as to what it is all about, and we would be able to provide some clear indication as to what is it that is included in that MoU, what are the areas where we are going to be collaborating specifically, in other words, exchange of information, referral of tax evasion cases for money laundering investigation and vice versa, from the MRA to the ICAC and from the ICAC to the MRA, and other issues like the setting up of a high-level committee for officers of the two organizations to come together and discuss about those referrals or any other issues that relate to cooperation. That's one. The second issue is why do we need an MoU? The FATF places a lot of emphasis on domestic cooperation. In fact, a little history. Previously, we had under the FATF system what was called the 40+9 recommendation. In other words, there were 40 AML and 9 combating terrorism financing. In those recommendations, the 40+9, there was a recommendation in terms of an obligation on countries to develop domestic national cooperation. That recommendation happened to be recommendation 36 in the previous or pre-2012 set of recommendations. Now, in 2012, the FATF revised its system and merged the two sets of recommendations, 40 plus 9, into one set, 40 recommendations. So the obligation of countries now is to comply with those 40 recommendations, which include something new, a few other obligations, an enhanced obligation on beneficial ownership, proliferation of terrorist financing, and a few others. Now, the interesting thing for our presentation today is that domestic cooperation was moved from recommendation 36 in the pre-2012 to recommendation 2 in the 2012 FATF recommendation. So that's a big leap in terms of focus. Because the FATF came to realize, and don't forget that the FATF, the World Bank, the IMF, we all go to countries, like we've been doing here, to assess Mauritius compliance with FATF obligation. I used to do that with the IMF. We go to countries and evaluate their system, the strength and the weaknesses. And why did the FATF move domestic cooperation from 36 to number 2? It's because it came to realize that at ground level, domestic cooperation was a big challenge. And why, the second reason as to why it moved and placed more emphasis on domestic cooperation is because in 2012, the FATF decided to add another dimension to its mutual evaluation, which is to ensure that countries' systems are effective. In other words, it would no longer be a question of adopting laws, putting in place institutions, ensuring conformity, but also ensuring that your system is working effectively. This is the reason why the FATF, in the review that it is doing for Mauritius now, since recently up to now, places a lot of emphasis on domestic cooperation. Third, domestic cooperation in respect of what we have been doing regarding the MoU relates more specifically to law enforcement. As the Director General has emphasized, to try and ensure that agencies are working together, law enforcement agencies are working together in order to try and strengthen the investigation of and prosecution of money laundering and terrorism financing based on tax evasion as a predicate offense. But domestic cooperation does not only mean cooperation among law enforcement agencies. I was just talking to the Director General over a cup of tea, and we also collaborate with the regulators, the FSC, the Bank of Mauritius, and other agencies which are supervisors, regulators, but we constitute the law enforcement component. So it is important for us to show to the FATF that we've done a lot of work. And as the Director General has rightly mentioned, we've been collaborating since quite some time now, not only in terms of exchanging information and passing over referral for investigation from one to the other, but we all have also been sharing our experiences and expertise in terms of training, capacity building, and in the future there could be other areas that could be included. I just mentioned that to the Director General, other areas where we could explore to reinforce cooperation at our national level. Don't forget, once we are out of the FATF list, let's hope sooner, there's no wood to touch, we are going to go through another round of evaluation in 3 to 4 years again. It's something that's going to continue every 4 or 5 years. So our system has to be strong. The good news is this, that we need to make sure that we're going to get out sooner rather than later, because Mauritius could be used as an example in the region in terms of our standard regarding AML, CFT, and this would be a very good example of joint collaboration between two agencies that set the pace for us to work together and strengthen cooperation. Like I have said before, there is a misunderstanding. It's not that we have never collaborated or cooperated or coordinated our activities. That's wrong. I mean, there's a perception, or there was until recently, that agencies were not talking. That's wrong. Everywhere I've gone, I've said this. We have been working together. I mean, I came back here in 2016, and the first thing that we did, I was invited by the Director General to one of the events organized by the MRA. Subsequently, I set up an interagency working group to try and get everybody together. I am presently chairing the task force on the report of Judge Lam Chan Lin on the Commission of Inquiry on Drug Trafficking. So coordination has been there. Collaboration has been there. It's just that now we are trying to strengthen and reinforce it. So this is a bit of history, and it's very important for us to understand and try, and when we talk to people, we don't collaborate. That's a wrong message. That's a wrong message. And it doesn't only damages the organization involved, it damages the country. Because there's a perception that goes out that, we are not working together. That's wrong. We are. But I mean, in any system, there are weaknesses and strengths. But we can only progress to the extent that we move forward and, address those shortcomings and weaknesses. And we've been doing that recently. And the MoU is a concrete example. We are going to show that to the FATF next week. And you know well that I'm chairing the group at national level that's doing all the preparation together with Mr. Ramlul to try and get Mauritius out of that list as soon as possible. So I am really thankful and honored that it's very timely, but it's okay. I mean, we've taken the time, and we will take the time that it requires. And we have been able to come up with something concrete, and I am hoping and I'm confident that in the future we are going to be able to work on an even stronger basis and footing with the MRA and move the fight against money laundering, tax evasion, terrorism financing to a higher level. So there's going to be challenges all the time. I mean, institution building takes time. Building cooperation among multiple agencies takes time. But the only point that is important is that we send the image and the signal that we are working and we are addressing all the issues. And it's not going to take one day. Rome was not built in a day, so they say, right? So at the end of the day, we can put in place any MoU, any system, any institution we want. But it's up to us to make it work. This is what the FATF is saying. Is your system effective? This is it. And the argument is, we have laws, we have many laws, we have institutions, we have many institutions. Are they working? And if they are working, are they working effectively to deliver the good? Which means at the end of the day, are we able to better manage and control money laundering, terrorism finance, tax evasion risk in the country and abroad, because transactions are, cross borders. So at the end of the day, I'm looking forward to try and, make sure that we, with God's blessing, try and get out of the list sooner rather than later, and try and strengthen our collaboration between the MRA and the ICAC. And thank you very much, Mr. Lal. Thank you, everybody, for the honor and the privilege to be here and to do this signing officially.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to proceed with the signing of the MoU. Thank you again, Dr. Bikari, for making it. Thank you, DG. A big thank you to all of you who have collaborated, contributed in making this event happen.